Hi, everybody. So, as Angel mentioned, my name is Claire O'Donnell. I'm from Parkin Architects. We're an architecture firm based in Toronto. We also have offices in Vancouver and Ottawa. We've over 100 people working in between our three offices, and we've been working on healthcare since 1940, as well as some other project typologies, justice, education, research, recreation, particularly arenas. This particular foray into VR is with one of our healthcare architects, St. Mary's. So I want to thank them very much for hosting us physically in their hospital today. Lucy Nakarada and Lisa Turlovic, who are the program manager and assistant manager, are actually going to jump in and add some of their insight from a user point of view rather than a designer point of view. The project we're working on at St. Mary's is a heart rhythm project, and I think Lisa and Lucy are much better able to speak about the function of that. So if I could hand it over to you both for a second.
Parkin has been working with St. Mary's Hospital over the years, and more recently on the EP program, Heart Rhythm Expansion of our cardiac program here at St. Mary's. We needed to build a space where we could provide these services, more of a procedural area, as well we knew we had to expand our receiving and recovery area for our patients. We had an existing shell of an OR space that was never built into literally a shell of a room. And this was identified as a space that we would be developing our procedure room. One of the opportunities that Parkin came forward with was to look at this room through a VR opportunity. And that was actually well received amongst the group. It really gave us a great perception about space and possibly how things could move, where we were concerned about some impingements, where we could place pieces of equipment. It was very valued, and it was a piece that I think really gave us some clarity.
I'm going to jump straight into, we're going to land here, but in the enclosed room with the ceiling. And I'm going to gather you all to me right now. So as we enter into the room, you can see we have a position for a circulating nurse here. This position, so mobile lead shield with the workstation, can move anywhere in the room. So when you're bringing a patient in first instance, this would not be an obstruction. But from this position, you can see as you would enter the room, the table would actually rotate clockwise. So the patients could be brought in from this side and transferred, and then the procedure table would move back into its current location. If we move around, you're going to be able to see first just general geography of the room, procedure table and floor-mounted C-arm located centrally in the room. Just here at the very back of the room, you can see the door to the sterile core, so making sure that separation of clean and soiled is always maintained. Behind me here is the control center. So this is where the C-arm technologists will actually operate and review and maintain eye contact with the physician. And just this door through that we can see through the window here is into the computer. So the guts of all of the C-arm, the drivers for the C-arm. This is the position that the cardiologist will work on typically. So one of the really key things when we laid out the room was making sure that the vision of the monitor, it's a little bit high in this situation, but you can tell really easily that it would obliterate this window from a viewpoint. So with a simple turn of the head, you can make and keep that visual connection to the control room. And so always ensure that you have that backup and support when you need it. As we move through, anesthesia is typically located just here behind where we've hidden zero gravity. So I'm going to actually jump into zero gravity just for a second. So that shields you without burdening you with lead. Having lead on all the time is very heavy and can cause some shoulder and back injuries. So this is the anesthesia machine with the anesthesia boom here. So typically anesthesia would be located off the patient's right shoulder for this. In this situation, one of the user groups that we spent a lot of time with, because they don't move around very much and they have a long time to spend in this particular location. So we wanted to be sure that the position was optimized for them without encroaching on any of the cardiologist's space and without causing any potential injury to themselves, or if they need to move around. We've hidden some of the wires and cables. You can see ghosted in here some that we do have, but there's usually a lot more cabling through this area. if you can jump into the control room behind the computers, so you can just see how we maintained that line of sight and vision, but how it was very important to maintain that situation and that vision between the two spaces. One of the other things we had in the control room is just charting desk to make it nice and easy, and we're working on a millwork layout for this space to make sure that these monitors are actually double the size in reality. So we'll be spacing and optimizing the desk space to make sure that everybody is comfortable sitting in here for that procedure duration. There's a lot of stuff happening on the floor. There are a lot of potential things to trip up on, but there are also a terrifying number of ceiling mounted pieces of equipment, mechanical fixtures, everything. So in this situation, everything's ceiling mounted to keep floor space free, allow everyone to circulate. But we've got to deal with lights, tracks for all of the equipment. This monitor track is really huge, very substantial piece of equipment. We've got laminar flow, all our air diffusers, and then lighting all around, and you can see some pot lights on the outside as well. So the ceiling becomes quite a mess of equipment and coordination as well when you picture all of the mechanical and electrical that are actually in the ceiling and making sure those interfaces work. It was one of the really great things about using VR that we were able to take all of those 2D lines on a drawing and just expand into the real world. So it was much easier to differentiate the base of the C-arm from what is actually a surgical light. And in a 2D drawing, because they're both circular of approximately the same dimension, they become something that is easily confused in a 2D drawing. And it also allows us to see where we may have potential conflicts. And again, getting back to those lines of sight, we can see as soon as we step in here that monitor is going to obliterate the view from the cardiologist's view to the control room. So you can see how that will be completely eliminated here. We've just shown this room to show how quickly we were able to change the entire layout without building physical model or having to create the entire room so that the user group were going to be able to actually experience what it's like to stand in both spaces and get that sense of space.
So it's Cameron Shawns here. I'm one of the architects that worked on this project with Claire and the people from St. Mary's. And I guess all I wanted to add is that we just found this to be a really useful tool to help the clinical people who frankly don't read drawings on a day-to-day basis. It gave them we think, a great opportunity to be able to understand in a much better manner what the space was going to look like when it was finally constructed, and it actually worked quite well for us to look at different opportunities or problems that we had within the design and to fix them up based on the feedback we got from this.
So hi, it's Lisa. I'm the assistant manager right now for the EP program. So I've been spending a lot of time working on the design of this room. And one of the biggest challenges is that we want to be able to plan ahead in what we're doing. So we're looking at setting the room up to have a EP suite, also be able to do devices, but also keeping in mind those other procedures I think that Lucy had touched on as well, the TAVI and, possibly a hybrid or open room. So with that, there become a lot of specialties, a lot of people who have interest in the room. But I think what is very impressive with everybody when they came and they were able to put this on, the anesthetists, they're worried about their area and what they can do and how they'll be able to set up their equipment, what space they'll have, how they can get into the patient, how can they bring in accessory equipment in around the patient. And they were able to actually go where they would be standing and see how that would fit in. And I think that gave them a lot of confidence in what we were doing. So I think with us, because there were so many players, I think it was just a great chance that everybody could see how they will fit in, because there's nothing worse than knowing that this is something you're going to use in the future and having no say in it or having no idea of how you will be working or being used in that area.
The first time we brought it to St. Mary's, we were maybe less invested or hadn't become as immersed in VR technologies in our office. So it was a little bit of an experiment for us too. So we only had a single headset. So we did something similar to what we're doing at St. Mary's right now, where we had a person in the headset, and then we also had the projection so that people were going to be able to watch how each person, like whether it was perfusionist, anesthesia, was circulating nurse, cardiologist, like whomever it was going to experience that space. We could get an idea of who was doing what, who needed more space where, and it was more of a unique individual perspective at that time rather than a group situation. But I guess we could maybe set up some people. So Armando's performing a role right now in the control room. Joel, maybe, because I see you there, can you just jump in behind the lead shield? Form the role of circulating nurse. Thank you. I need someone else here beside me. Thanks, Logan. Thank you. Appreciate that. Then we need another person in the control room. We need someone at the equipment boom on the foot of the table. Let me see who's anywhere. Adam, would you be able to jump into the just behind zero gravity to act as anesthesia? If everyone else can get out of the model, we can carry on some EP procedures and figure out the heart rhythm of our model. We've used VR a lot as a show and tell tool or a presentation tool. We've created massing, we've created cities. Mario's done a couple of urban blocks. We've used it to do lobby spaces, sort of larger volumes of space where we really want to show the experience of it. And the user group may not be able to do it to fully appreciate it just in a 2D drawing.
In some cases, we've used virtual reality as a way to mock up the design in the earlier schematic stage and the block concept, not necessarily to this level, but where we wanted to show larger ideas on using space. We found that virtual reality is a really valuable tool for mocking up these kinds of spaces, these small spaces. This is where we find the biggest challenges in terms of getting the equipment right, getting these big pieces right so that they work for our clients.
For some procedures, the patient is actually awake on the table and can look around, particularly in just a catheter when getting the catheter in. So you can actually get that patient perspective, which maybe isn't the most typical situation that you would see. It's a different perspective to one that we'd normally have.
When you do one of these meetings, how do you kind of carry the feedback back into the actual design process? Do you have someone taking notes? Are you recording the screen? Are you recording the entire meeting?
We're going to begin to record the meetings, particularly recording the screen. There's a tool that I didn't use at all in this meeting, the sketch tool. So we will have an opportunity to draw on where we want devices on things, so we can say that we need to move all of these pieces up, we need to make it more accessible, we want to get rid of this particular tray. We can start making more visual notes for ourselves, but quite often we do minute it with notes. One of the things that'll make a big difference for us is that if the users are in the model and we're watching the model on the screen, we will just be taking notes and recording things in a more traditional way. So it'll really depend who's in the model and who's actually doing the recording of the particular session.
Yeah, thank you, St. Mary's, and thank you, Parkin, for your time today, for this wonderful model, and for the wealth of knowledge.
Thanks, everybody.